God rest you, merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power. We were torn astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. God rest you, merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power. We were torn astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy.
Sweet little Jesus boy, they made you reborn in a manger. Sweet little holy child, didn't know who you were, didn't know you'd come to save us, Lord, and take our sins away. Our eyes were blind, we couldn't see. We didn't know who you were. Long time ago, you were born in a manger low. Sweet little Jesus boy, the world treats you mean, Lord, treats you mean too, but that's how things are done down here. We didn't know who you were. You have taught us how. We are trying. Master, you have taught us how. Even when you were dying, just seems like we can't do right. Look what we've done to you. But please, sir, forgive us, Lord. We didn't know it was you. Sweet little Jesus boy, born long time ago. Sweet little holy child, we didn't know who you
were. Long time ago in Bethlehem, Holy Bible say, Mary's boy child, Jesus Christ, was born on Christmas Day. While shepherds watch their flocks by night, see a bright shiny star. They hear a choir sing a song, music came from afar. Hark now, hear the angels sing, King is born today, and man will live forevermore, because it's Christmas Day. Now Joseph and his wife Mary came to Bethlehem that night. They found no place to bear their child, not a single room was in sight. By and by they found a little nook in a stable all forlorn. And in that manger, cold and dark, Mary's little boy was born. Hark now, hear the angels sing, King is born today. Man will live forevermore, because it's Christmas Day. Trumpets sound and the angels will sing, listen to what they say. That man will live forevermore, because it's Christmas Day. That man will live forevermore, because it's Christmas Day. That man will live forevermore. A king was born that day.
So I got this friend, Joe Carpenter, and he's engaged to this girl named Mary. He works over at that furniture place over on Georgia Avenue, but he lives all the way out in McCormick. Now, I know what you're thinking. Can anything good come out of McCormick? Well, it can, because this guy is as good as gold. Anyway, like I was saying, Joe asked this girl to marry him, and she's a sweetheart. She's smart, and man, you ought to hear her sing. I honestly can't remember how they got together. I think maybe their parents knew each other or something. Anyway, they're good together, you know. They're good for each other. Joe's a hard worker. He's good with his hands, but he's always been like super serious. Well, at least he used to be until he met Mary. I've known him for almost his whole life, but I've never seen him smile the way that he does when she walks into the room. It's like he's more alive because of her. Now, I haven't known Mary nearly as long as I've known Joe, but as much as she's loosened him up, she seems to find strength in how stable and serious he is. So, like I said, they're good together. But something really weird happened with him. This girl, Mary, she turns up pregnant. I know. It wouldn't be the first time that this kind of thing happened with a young couple in love, but the thing is, Joe swears the baby isn't his. He says it can't be his because they were waiting until they got married. Look, whether you do or not, I believe him because Joe's probably the most honest guy I know. He was really broken up about the whole thing and hurt. He didn't see it coming. It just didn't make any sense. And how could he ever trust her again, much less spend the rest of his life with someone he couldn't trust? But as crushed as he was, Joe still loved that girl. He didn't understand why she did what she appeared to have done, but he still didn't want to hurt her or humiliate her. So he was trying to come up with a way to break things off quietly without making a big fuss, for her sake. He was even trying to think of ways that he could make sure that she and the baby that wasn't his, mind you, were taken care of, and that they had what they needed. That's just the kind of guy he is. Joe and I stayed up late one night talking about it. Well, to be honest, he talked and I mostly listened. I didn't know what to tell him. At the end of the night, he still didn't know what he was going to do. He went home to sleep on it, and I told him I'd meet up with him the next day at the Waffle House on Exit 1. I said we'd grab some breakfast and talk about it a little more before work. You know how it is. You've got to be there for your friends when they're going through something, right? Well, the next morning I got there a little early, so I went ahead and got us a table. Joe walked in about 10 minutes late, and he looked kind of dazed, like he was in shock. When I first saw him, I thought he might have been drinking or something. I mean, Joe really isn't much of a drinker, but who could have blamed him? That wasn't it, though. That wasn't it at all. I asked him what was up, and he just sat there for a minute, like he was looking for the right words or something, and he just couldn't find them. Finally, he said, I think I met an angel. When? I asked. Last night after you left? He nodded. Well, good for him, I thought. I wouldn't have expected him to meet another girl so fast, but the guy deserved a break. Maybe a rebound was just what the doctor ordered. So, what's her name? I asked. He blinked and said, What? I said, her name. No, he said. And he shook his head and seemed to snap out of it a little. And not a girl who was like an angel. I mean, I met an angel. Like an angel. Now, I can't remember if this particular Waffle House has security cameras or not, but I'd pay good money to see any footage of the look on my face when he said that. I mean, how would you have reacted? Joe's a pretty down-to-earth kind of guy. He's not one to exaggerate, and he's as honest as the day is long, but an angel? Like an angel. He said that an angel just showed up at his house after he went to bed. I asked him how he knew it was an angel. Did it have some kind of a, "Hi, I'm an angel" name tag? Is there some kind of a uniform? Did it flash a shiny angel badge? He looked at me with that serious look of his and said, "Trust me, you know." Well, according to Joe, that angel told him that Mary hadn't done him wrong at all, and that he should go ahead and marry her. He told Joe that the baby was a miracle that had happened because of the power of God's breath or wind, or maybe it had something to do with ghosts. I don't know, man, because I was really kind of freaked out at this point. Joe was just telling me all of this stuff in that no-nonsense, matter-of-fact way of his. Like he was telling me about making a stop at the hardware store on the way to breakfast instead of having had conversations with angels about miracle babies and some kind of holy ghost. I asked him what he was going to do, and he said that he was going to marry her. And so I said, "What about the kid?" He says, "My wife will be his mother, so I'm going to be a dad, aren't I?" Oh wait, almost forgot to tell you. Joe said that the angel told him that he should name the kid Jesus, but that people would call him Emmanuel. I thought that was weird. That he was supposed to name the baby one thing, that people would call him something else, so I Googled it. Where Joe comes from, Jesus is a pretty common name, like Josh or Joshua. But that other name, the one that people would supposedly call him, Emmanuel, it turns out it's a really ancient name with a very specific meaning. It means God with us. Now think about that for a second. That angel was telling my friend Joe that one day people were going to look at this child that he was going to raise as his son and say, "Well, you look at that. God is with us."
Mary, did you know that your baby boy will someday walk on water? Mary, did you know that your baby boy will save our sons and daughters? Did you know that your baby boy has come to make us new? This child that you've delivered will soon deliver you. Mary, did you know that your baby boy will give sight to a blind man? Mary, did you know that your baby boy on the sea with his hand? Did you know that your baby boy is walked where angels draw? When you kiss your little baby, you've kissed the face of God. Mary, did you know? Mary, did you know? The blind will see, the deaf will live, and will live again. The lame will leap, the dumb will speak, praises of the Lamb. Mary, did you know that your baby boy was known before creation? Mary, did you know that your baby boy one day rule the nations? Did you know that your baby boy is heaven's perfect lamb? The sleeping child you're holding is his
For the record, I am an advisor in the administration of President Harold Patterson, and this interview will likely mark the end of my political career. Why am I doing this? Well, it's all just gone too far. I believed in the guy when I first came on board. He was bigger than life, you know? But now? I never would have thought that he could do anything like... No, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, I've been working for President Patterson since he was Governor Patterson. Heck, I even worked on that campaign. Harold the Great. Did you know he came up with that nickname himself? Yeah, seriously. He nicknamed himself Harold the Great. How cornball is that? I still can't believe it stuck. Anyway, as much as he wants everyone to think of him as this self-made man, he basically owes his entire political career to his daddy. Anthony Patterson was a titan in the business world. He was never a politician in any official sense, but he was a master at influencing policy and politicians to make things, shall we say, more favorable for him and his business interests. He wasn't really a member of any political party. Instead, he just sort of ingratiated himself to whoever was in power at the moment. And his affiliations could turn on a dime. He also made sure to make the right connections for his sons, Harold and Philip. A political career wasn't really feasible for Anthony, for a number of reasons, but he thought it would suit his two boys just fine, and that would advance his own interests as well. As everyone knows, Anthony died before Harold even became governor. The official story was that it was a heart attack, but behind closed doors, the rumor is that he was actually poisoned. Anyway, since Anthony greased the right wheels, Harold slid right into the governor's seat, and it wasn't too long before he started eyeing the presidency. I know you already know a lot of this, but I kind of need to give you my perspective on how it started to set the stage for what this interview is really about. When he made his bid to run for president, Harold played things in a very particular way. He won the election on a technicality, which was what he was betting on all along. He was savvy enough to know that he couldn't win outright, so he gambled on an unorthodox, risky, and, well, frankly, a shady strategy, and he won. His staunchest supporters are absolutely unwavering in their support, but most people questioned his legitimacy since day one. You know as well as I do that the nation has never been more polarized. Now, we didn't create that, but I guess I have to admit that we leveraged it for our own purposes over and over again, and, well, we definitely made it worse. What his critics won't admit, though, is that he's actually pulled off some pretty impressive things as president. The crime rate has actually gone down. His policies have been pretty good, both for agriculture and corporations. The economy has surged. I know some people will attribute that to the previous administration, but it happened on his watch, so he takes credit for it. He even advanced the interests of the religious community in ways that no other administration has been willing to address. I know that in public he tries to act like the critics don't bother him, but the truth is, they do. In a weird way, the man just wants to be loved, and he genuinely doesn't seem to understand why so many people don't like him. Honestly, I think that confusion is where some of the paranoia comes from. He's paranoid to a degree that I have never seen in a person before in real life. I think it's always been there on some level, but it's gotten so much worse. Part of it comes from the fact that the guy has an ego the size of Texas, and he really doesn't understand when people don't like him as much as he likes himself. In his mind, if you don't like him, or if you don't agree with him, or if you even question him, then you must be either stupid or evil. And the guy loves power. I guess that's probably not completely his fault. After all, he is what his father raised him to be. But here's the thing. With all of the persistent questions about his legitimacy, it's like all of that energy that he put into his ambition for gaining power has been transformed into paranoia about losing that power. He's become completely unhinged. He thinks that everyone is out to get him. He's suspicious even of his close friends and allies. They'll make some offhanded comment that doesn't line up with something that he thinks, and it becomes his mission to destroy them because he thinks that they're going to take his power. It's so bad that he's even starting to act that way about his wife and his kids. Anyway, a few weeks ago, this delegation came to the White House for an official state visit. The whole thing was kind of unusual. For starters, there were only a handful of them, and they were all really into some religion that nobody practices in this part of the world. But they were from one of those countries in the East where religion and government overlap, and it's one of those countries that we're always trying to improve our relationship with, so when their government made the request, it was granted. We threw one of those official state dinners, and the delegation sat at the president's table. They were talking about some spiritual mumbo-jumbo, something about astrology, stars and prophecies and that kind of thing. Now, as much as Patterson has tried to get a particular segment of the religious community in the U.S. on board with him through a few policies they really like, he's really not a particularly religious or spiritual guy. He's also not known for having a particularly good attention span. I saw his eyes starting to glaze over as they talked. But then they said something that seemed to grab his attention. He turned on his version of charm and re-engaged in the conversation, but I could also see a hint of nervous panic in his eyes. You'll never guess what they were talking about. A baby. They told the President of the United States of America that the stars had told them that a baby would be born somewhere in the southern part of the country, and that this child would be the true leader that the people had been waiting for. They explained that the main reason for their trip was to find this kid and to honor him. Now, any other president would have probably said something polite like, "Oh, that's very interesting," and then smoothly changed the subject, but not Harold Patterson. He started buttering them up and trying to get more information. You could tell he thought he was being smooth about it too, but his paranoia makes him so ham-fisted and obvious that the men in the visiting delegation became visibly uncomfortable. They excused themselves as politely as they could and left the dinner and the White House earlier than scheduled. As they were leaving, Patterson told them to make sure to let him know when they found the child, because he wanted to go and pay his respects too. Again, he appeared to think that he was being subtle, but from the looks on their faces, I really don't think they bought it. After the foreign delegation left, the president started meeting with all kinds of religious scholars and clergy. If I'm being honest, some of them seemed like real kooks. After talking to them, he somehow determined that the kid would be born in South Carolina or Georgia, that he would be male, and that racially he would be an ethnic minority, probably African American or Hispanic. Hey, don't look at me. As far as I was concerned, we were already in tinfoil hat territory here. You wanted to know why what's happening is happening, right? This is why. The President of the United States of America got scared that his power and position were being threatened by a baby. Weeks passed, and that foreign delegation never made contact with him to tell him the baby's exact location. Patterson went ballistic. I'm not exaggerating. He flew into a rage and signed an executive order that all minority children 2 and under and their parents in the states of Georgia and South Carolina were to be detained in special camps. This is how far gone the man is. In different interviews, I've actually heard him refer to them as internment camps or concentration camps, as if he's somehow forgotten history or how that's going to play with people. He keeps telling everyone that he's recently become aware of an imminent threat to our country, but the information is so sensitive that it's classified and can't be revealed to the public. He says his executive order is a necessary expansion of the Patriot Act, and that it's only temporary until we can figure out what's going on. No, I don't think it's constitutional, and it's being challenged by everyone who has the power to challenge it. But that takes time. I will say this, though. If there really is a kid like that out there, and if I were one of his parents, I'd do everything I could to sneak him into Canada or Mexico and wait until old Harold the Great isn't in charge anymore. My guess is they won't have to wait too long.
silent night, holy night. Shepherds quake at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy
All right, so here's the deal. I've got this friend named Theodore and this other friend named William. We've got jobs as security guards at the Augusta Regional Airport. We watch cars in the long-term parking lot at night. When we graduated from high school, none of us knew what we wanted to do with our lives, but we knew we weren't ready for college or careers or anything like that. We wanted to just hang out and play video games and sort of find ourselves. None of our parents were willing to bankroll our epic quests of self-discovery, so we started looking for easy cakewalk jobs to pay the bills and a cheap apartment to share. The overnight parking lot security guard thing seemed like a pretty sweet gig at first. The airport is kind of in the middle of nowhere. It basically closes down at night, and we're guarding cars that nobody ever really tries to mess with in any way. We mostly sat around and played cards all night and then went back to our apartment to sleep during the day. It's literally the easiest job ever. But it also may be the most boring job ever. And at this point, we're just kind of stuck in it. It seems like all of our other friends from high school have degrees and families and careers now. But we're still doing the same old thing. We watch other people's cars that nobody ever tries to steal, in the dark, in the middle of nowhere, for unimpressive paychecks. Things that matter in the world seem to happen in the daylight while we're asleep, and it feels like it's all just passing us by. Sometimes I feel like I barely even exist. It's not that people think less of us because of what we've done or not done with our lives. It's that they don't really think of us at all. I won't speak for the other two guys, but I feel kind of invisible, unimportant, forgotten. Or at least I did feel that way until the other night when something kind of amazing happened. Now, this might sound crazy at first, but if you'll just hear me out, I think, well, it'll probably still sound crazy, but here's what happened. The other night, we were sitting around in the airport parking lot, again, half-heartedly playing our 4 millionth hand of cards, when out of nowhere, well, it was like somebody turned on the sun in the parking lot. I don't mean somebody turned on the lights in the parking lot, those had already been on. I meant that it went from that sort of grocery store parking lot fluorescent dimness to like a bolt of lightning flashed in the sky and then just stayed there. When our eyes adjusted, which honestly took a few minutes, we looked up and there was, there was this guy standing in the middle of the parking lot. We all jumped when we saw him. Like I said, nothing ever happens out there. We never see anybody while we're at work except each other. Ted looked over at us and said, "Guys, strange things are afoot at the Augusta Regional Airport." We grabbed our flashlights, even though we didn't really need them, climbed into the airport security golf cart, and drove over to where the guy was standing. By the way, all of that light? I know this sounds nuts, but it was like it was all somehow coming from him. When we got over to where he was, we climbed out of the cart. I'm not ashamed to say that I was scared out of my mind. All three of us were. But Bill and Ted were just kind of frozen in place, so I walked up to the shiny guy and asked him who he was and what exactly he was doing in the Augusta Regional Airport parking lot at this hour. But before I could say anything, he looked at me and said, "Be ye not afraid, for behold, I proclaim to you good tidings of great joy, which shall be for all people." I just kind of stared and blinked a couple of times. He looked amused and said, "Sorry about that. I forgot what year it was. Let's try this again. Don't be afraid. Listen, I've got good news of great joy, news that will affect everybody, everywhere." He looked up at me to see if I was tracking with him this time. I nodded for him to go on, so he said, "Today in the town of North Augusta, a child has been born who can save you all. He's the one you've all been waiting for, whether you knew it or not. You'll know you found him when you find a baby wrapped in a blanket, lying in a toolbox at a hotel." Before I could say anything in response, a bunch of other shiny, glowing guys just kind of appeared around the first guy. Then they all started singing a song. Yes, I promise we weren't on anything. It happened just like I'm telling you. I can't remember all the words to their song, and I'm certainly not going to try to sing it for you, but it was something about glory to God in the highest, let there finally be peace on earth, and may people finally learn to want to pursue good for each other rather than just for themselves. And then they were just gone. The three of us were left standing alone in our dimly lit airport parking lot again. We all just stood there in complete silence for a minute or two. Then Ted said, "What just happened?" Bill looked at him and said, "Ted, you and I have witnessed many things, but nothing as bodacious as what just happened." Then I said, "Guys, I think that was an angel." Ted said, "No way." And I said, "Yes way, Ted." Bill said, "Dude, we've got to go see this for ourselves." "But how do we find the place that the angel was talking about?" I reminded Bill that North Augusta only has like 3 hotels in the first place, and the guy was most likely not talking about the one downtown. So we all jumped into Bill's 1997 Ford Taurus and took off, headed for exit 5. We checked at the Holiday Inn Express first, but the lady at the desk had no idea what we were talking about and told us to leave before we upset the other guests. I think the only reason she didn't call the cops is because we were still wearing our security guard uniforms. So we went to check out the Sleep Inn just down the road. When we told the guy at the desk what we were looking for, he looked stunned. Then he said, "Follow me." He led us through the breakfast area and out a glass door in the back. Then he led us to the left, down a narrow pathway between the back wall of the hotel and a vine-covered fence that surrounded a water tower. As we walked, he said, "I didn't know what else to do. We're never full, but we are tonight, and so is the Holiday Inn. I didn't have time to call anybody. She just didn't have time." He led us to a maintenance shed that was kind of hidden away over to the side. He opened the door, and we saw a clearly exhausted young woman lying on a cot, and a man looking down at a large toolbox on the floor. All of the tools had been dumped out in a pile by a space heater that was plugged into an extension cord that was running back to the hotel. When we looked inside the toolbox, we saw a baby wrapped in a blanket. The man looked up at us and said, "Hey guys, my name's Joe. This is Mary, and this is our son." My friends and I looked at each other in shock. It was a baby, wrapped in a blanket, in a toolbox, at the Sleep Inn off exit 5 in North Augusta. Then Joe asked us, "So what brings you boys out to the tool shed beside the Sleep Inn this fine evening?" So we told him about what happened back at the airport, and he just started laughing and said, "Boys, if you think that's something, man, have I got a story for you." Then he told us his story about Mary and the pregnancy and the angel. As he finished, we were all looking down at the baby in the toolbox, and Joe said, "So we named him Jesus." Like I said, I know all of this sounds crazy. You can think or believe whatever you want, but here's the thing. When God showed up, it wasn't just for people who had it all together. It wasn't just for the people who were already religious. God was born to nobodies in a shed. Angels showed up to announce it to nobodies doing a nothing job in the middle of nowhere. God showed up for all of the little guys and the outcasts and the underdogs. God came for everyone who everyone else has given up on. God came for the people who keep getting walked on by the powerful and privileged people who are too busy clawing their way to the top to even notice. And if that's true, then maybe there really is hope for the world after all. If that's true, then maybe even people like you and me can say with confidence, well, will you look at that? God is with us.
I have traveled many moonless nights, cold and weary, with a baby inside, and I wonder what I've done. Holy Father, you have come and chosen me now to carry your son. I am waiting in a silent prayer. I am frightened by the Lord I bear, in a world as cold as stone. Must I walk this path alone? Be with me now, be with me now. Breath of heaven, hold me together, be forever near me. Breath of heaven, breath of heaven, light in my darkness, pour over me your holiness, for you are holy. Breath of heaven, do you wonder as you watch my face, if a wise one should have had my place? Still I offer all I am, for the mercy of your plan. Help me be strong, help me breath of heaven, hold me together, be forever near me. Breath of heaven, breath of heaven, light in my darkness, pour over me your holiness, for you are holy. Breath of heaven, breath of heaven, breath of heaven.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt his word. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. thank, for the slave is a brother, and in his name all oppressions shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise, we let on within us praise his holy name. Christ is the Lord. Let ever praise thee. Noel, Noel, oh night divine. Noel.